Welcome to the Business Rebellion, the podcast for founders and leaders who know something about the way business is done doesn't sit right anymore. Not because they're failing, but because the model is broken. We talk a lot about growth in business, revenue, team, wealth growth, but one of the biggest things that quietly shapes success is behavior. Because most financial decisions aren't made from spreadsheets. They're made from stress, identity, pressure, fear, momentum. Today's conversation is about the emotional side of wealth and why intelligent, capable founders still sabotage financial security without even realizing it. This is Wealth Without Self-Sabotage. And today's guest is Andrew Chan. Andrew is a Sydney-based financial advisor and business owner at Phoenix Private Wealth Management, where he works with professionals and business owners navigating complex financial decisions with greater clarity. What I appreciate about Andrew's approach is that it goes well beyond numbers. His work focuses on helping individuals and families align their wealth with what actually matters so they can build lives that feel more intentional, sustainable, and satisfying. Alongside his work in wealth management, Andrew is also a dedicated dragon boat athlete with a strong focus on discipline, performance, and continuous improvement, which I think connects beautifully to today's conversation around behavior and decision-making under pressure. Andrew, welcome to the Business Rebellion.
Thanks, Kerrie. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So for people who don't know your work yet, what kind of conversations are business owners usually having with you when money stress starts affecting decision making?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think about their business owners. They're saying most of the people I work with are doing well on paper. They have good income, good assets, good businesses. But when you dig deeper, there's an underlying stress. So there's a lot going on at the moment. So not because they're failing, just because they're not sure what it is they've built is actually safe. So they want guidance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, what patterns do you notice in those founders who are financially successful on paper and still feel pressure internally?
Yeah, I mean, you're saying that wealth isn't just about the numbers. We're conditioned to think that wealth is how much you earn or how well your investments perform. But in reality, wealth is about structure, clarity, and control. Because I've seen people with millions still feel anxious, while others with less feel completely at ease. So the difference isn't the number; it's how organized their financial world is, and that's what we help with.
That's actually, I really like that piece, that it's what you said there about how it doesn't matter how much they've got. You've seen both sides of that coin in both of those camps, right? So it's fascinating that you say that even ones with less are less stressed sometimes. Like, you don't expect that, right? You know, quite often we're conditioned to the fact that the more wealth and money you have, the less stress you're supposed to have, not more. So
Yes.
it's fascinating that you bring that up, because I think, you know, quite a lot of people don't see it that way. They think that, you know, money solves everything. You know, how have we heard that?
Yeah, that's what we call the pressure cycle. So that's what we see a lot of, especially with business owners and professionals. How you define the pressure cycle is you earn more, your lifestyle expands, your expectations rise, and suddenly you need to keep earning and at the level just to maintain your lifestyle. So instead of people feeling freer, you actually feel more trapped. And the dangerous part is it all looks like success from the outside.
Oh, that's wow. What a sham.
It's the world we live in today, but I believe it's changing. I think you can see that in, I guess, the performance in luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, and you see whole generations starting to opt out of those big brands. They're starting to think more altruistically what they should do, where they should be. But at some level, you start from both ends. If you don't have the security around you, then it makes things difficult. So it's often the tug of war between identity and money.
Yeah. So a lot of people think wealth is purely mathematical. So where do emotions and behavior actually shape financial?
Yeah, emotion behaviors. Well, it's about how, as I said, your money is rarely about money. It's tied to identity.
Yeah.
So if someone sees themselves as a provider or a successful one, they put immense pressure on themselves to keep performing. There's no happiness there. So that can lead to decisions that are not strategic, and they're highly emotional. So the true financial clarity comes when your identity is not dependent on your income continue to rise. It's about what are the things that you're looking to do, to achieve for your family, for your partner, for yourself, for activities or causes that you feel so strongly about. And that's when we start to get to the core of why we plan.
So is that kind of why some intelligent business owners still make reactive or self-sabotaging money decisions, because they tie it to their identity?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it makes it very hard to separate themselves. You have, for example, a successful surgeon. They're able to do good in the work, their careers, their practice, but at some point they'll have to let go. But because they're so defined by what they do, they're unable to then have a satisfactory life beyond retirement, right? And so we call it retirement, but it's really financial freedom. They often get to the point where they don't have to work, but have they said who it is? So it's not about money. It's to say, how do I create a life beyond a life? And we often joke about, do you live to work or do you work to live? And given how we are and how society is, and the loyalties between employers and employees, and those dynamics are far more removed these days after COVID. And so a lot more people are realizing that the simple life is not so bad, but it's to say, okay, if that's going to, we're working to live, it means to say, I'd rather work on the things that are going to help me, whether it be my self-development, my health, investing in my friendships and my family, because we know that in the blue zones, it's not just about living to 100. It's got to do with your diet. It's got to do with how many steps you're doing a day, up and down, but more importantly, your social network. And so you're not going to have a social network if you throw everything you have at your work only. You need to foster those relationships as you go.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say, like, their identity is not really tied to money, right? How many times do we all introduce ourselves to someone who's like, hi, what do you do? Right? This first question almost everybody asks when you meet someone new, right? Whether it's networking or at a family barbecue, it doesn't matter where you meet someone new. It's always about, what do you do? Like, what's your job role? No wonder we're stuck with that identity so closely.
It is true. We have a lot of misconceptions around what is safety and what is respect. So one of the biggest misconceptions is that high income equals financial security, or people say with high incomes you're and therefore they're professionals or well-to-do, so they're to be respected. In reality, I've seen a lot of high income earners with very little actual safety. They might have assets, they might have structure there, but they have no liquidity, they have no strategy. So they're exposed, even though they're on paper, they look successful. So when it comes to, they might be of a profession, they might be a doctor, a lawyer, a business owner. That's great. That's the ability to earn income. So people can be very successful in their businesses. That doesn't mean that that's the ability to earn an income. It doesn't say that they'll be able to manage cash flow. It doesn't mean that they're going to be able to put a strategy together where their assets will be able to do the heavy lifting for them once they retire, or sell those businesses if they're able to for what they want. And so often there's a perceived success, but will that success continue? And so, if we say to ourselves, look back on your life, look back from when you're 80. No one ever says, I married the richest guy or the richest woman. They talk about how that person made them feel, how successful they were at promoting a cause that left a legacy for the future, right? They're the things. Or did they represent Did they defend their nation in any sort of way? Did they lead society in any meaningful manner? Did they change the world for the better? So often there is nothing left in terms of, if I said to you, Kerrie, name me the richest man from the 1900s. Would you be able to give me that answer? No. But then if you told me, did someone advocate for the change in technology? Who created the first AI robot? I'm sure somewhere down the line you'll be able to say, hey, for sure it was this. This is the father of all things technological from the 20th century. So a lot of what we do, we sometimes misplace the importance because that's how we've been brought up thinking, because we come from a situation where we didn't have enough. We live in a society now where there is enough wealth. Everyone has an income. So really what defines us and who we are, they're the things that we probably realize later on that are more meaningful, that we don't get confused in this pressure cycle to earn more, spend more, without a thought of what was really important to us in the end of the day. Correct. Yeah. They're probably they're wishing they had those conversations that they shied away from, right? It's always to do with people and relationships.
Yeah. So what happens to financial decision making when founders are operating under chronic stress?
Yeah, chronic stress, they tend to have worse performance, right? So one concept I love is nervous system safe wealth strategy. So often business owners, when they get stressed, they look at their finances, and you should look in your finance in a structured way where your body actually feels calm. You're not reacting to every cash flow worry or every market movement. You know they're covered. So this is how we know that business owners don't. So they often focus heavily on performance of their business, returns in the market. The wealthy think differently. They prioritize protection first, because if your structure isn't right, tax, ownership, risk, you can lose years of progress very quickly when the market turns or the business cycle turns against you, or in fact the energy cycle, because of the wars currently in the Middle East all the way through. They impact your imports, your exports, your ability, the change in dollars if you have the need for cross-currency conversion. So your performance is very dependent on what you feel might be performance. But really, if you have the right protection in place, you have the right measures to mitigate those risks, you have the clarity of mind when it comes to business, and your assets are structured in a similar fashion, you don't need to worry. So when you do make decisions, they're from that nervous system safe place where you can choose where you go rather than being panicked to a quick stopgap measure. And that defines success for decisions and therefore wealth.
Yeah. So is that kind of so those stopgap measures are the kind of many decisions that get made from urgency?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, it's often difficult. So how I say clarity is understand your real position and your income, structure, make sure that your assets are structured. And that's what we do. So there's the business side where, business owners will have their business, make sure you know your numbers. But where we come in is to say we make sure that their assets are structured correctly across super, trusts, and their personal. And it's never been more important ever since the budget that was just handed down on Tuesday, how that greatly changes what those impacts are, right? And so we aren't living in a world where it's the same as it was during the forefathers, our parents or their grandparents. It's very different now. And it's such a moving feast that we need to be able to be agile, to move quickly, to reposition ourselves so we also can have that continued confidence. Because if someone to say, oh, I'm confident and I'm fine, well, no, there's the very changes that are coming to place that will be coming into in 2027. It will redefine where we are in terms of our efficiency in how we're managing our entities as well as our investments. And so we should be restructuring. And if you haven't, and no one's you're not being triggered to, no one's prompting you to, you probably don't have the right team around you to get that clarity and structure that you need. And with that structure and clarity, then you get control, right? So you're able to then put in buffers, you're not under pressure, you understand what you need to do. And so it's through strategy, which we help with the clients to align everything towards long-term outcomes that they want, right? Not short-term reactions. So this is where those 4 measures are put in place and everything changes. You go from reactive to intentional.
It's funny. Almost every person I talk to or follow online or whatever in this kind of space, everything comes down to structure. And it's harped on about so significantly. I think it's fascinating that that's one of the most important key things that no one even considers, especially when they try and do it on their own, right?
Yes. I mean, advice is not for everyone. I mean, everyone can, I think everyone has, with the tools that we have, are able to achieve so much, right? But we're talking about as an athlete, lots of people are gifted different levels of gifts in terms of their athletic ability. They also apply themselves with different levels of diligence, right? But if you assume that everyone had the same ability and everyone had the same diligence, well, the one that pays for the coach versus the one that doesn't, who's going to get ahead? You're paying for someone's experience, their insights, their capability to drive you further and faster. And that's really what that support is, to give them that edge.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely worth paying the expertise to get you there quicker too, right?
And look, the one thing that we don't have, and it's funny that you touched on that, is time. I mean, given that we're all praying that AI gives us some of us more longevity, but again, that longevity is finite, and so if we can achieve what we want to achieve sooner and be in that place, that happy place for longer, why often I would find it's a rare person who would want to turn that down.
Absolutely. So how much does identity shape financial behavior, would you say? And what changes financially when someone's self-worth becomes too tied to business performance?
Yeah, I would say identity is more to do with there's different sorts of identity. Some people are generous. Some people see themselves as very good savers. Some see themselves as terrible with money. I would say that how you view yourself has a lot of impact on what you're able to achieve. And so, if you're positive, you'll be able to achieve more. If you are negative, you'll achieve less. And so, often people think that by saving more or being, I would say, more frugal, they might not. They might be able to save more. But the whole concept of planning and strategy is to make sure that you are able to take advantage of all your opportunities. So if I was to say in business, if you came out and I'll share with you in Chinese, for example, culturally, if you came out and you didn't and you had a business lunch and you didn't spend a cent and you didn't pay for the meal or whatever it might be, you might have saved money, right? But in the Chinese culture, had you did that, you probably wouldn't have another meeting with those people. You'd probably infer your current financial position, and one would argue intuitively that you lost one deal for the sake of a lifetime of deals. So often the most basic thought when it comes to identity is to say, what is your strengths? Are you someone who's able to create more? Are you someone who's able to be a rainmaker? If that's the case, well, then we need to put the structure around you to make sure that you know exactly how much you can be spending to put yourself in that key money position. But if you're not that person, then definitely we wouldn't be wasting money if you are not able to create a better situation from it. So each person is different, each business owner, depending on not only their identity, getting to see how they view money based on what they're able to then make from that money is relative to each individual. So there's no wrong or right answers. It's to say, if someone believes their value comes from achieving, earning, providing, money becomes the scoreboard for keeping that identity. That's why people don't just want more wealth. They want to feel like they need it to feel okay. But we're saying we've got a shift that happens when the identity moves from I prove myself worth from income and business to I build systems that support my life and who I am. And so that's kind of where we want people to get to. Is like, because your identity is stable, you make good, strong decisions that just don't mean well for your bottom line, but are meaningful for you emotionally, for your family. And so it's wholesome in a whole multitude of other areas that amplify your business, your life, your personal character, and what you stand for.
Yeah. So I like that part. That's good that you kind of look at it from a holistic perspective, kind of incorporates their whole life. So why do so many high income founders still not really feel financially safe?
Yeah, I've seen people earning 300, 500K plus and still one bad year away from stress because everything is built on cash flow. There's no foundation to it. Real money doesn't come from how much you make. It comes from how your financial life is engineered to support all the things that you need to feel confident, healthy, make good, sound decisions, have that board of directors or professionals around you to make those good decisions. So, when you do make that decision, you have taken the necessary due diligence to know that that's the right thing, not only for you, your business, but your family, and more importantly, yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the difference between having money and actually feeling secure? So
Yeah, I mean, it's knowing your numbers, right? So having money is one thing. Understanding how much tax you have to pay, how much debt you have to pay, how much you need to grow that business, how much money that's going to take, how much you need to be able to feel comfortable where you don't have to work for the rest of your life, how much you need to put towards that, and where you're going to put that to have it invested securely. If you have all those answered and they're all in one situation, one strategy where you have someone that you can tap into, for example, we do that for our clients. If something shifts in the world and we know that that's not going to affect our strategy because we've factored that in, because that is one of the stress tests that we've placed your strategy under, all you need to do is pick up a phone call, speak to me. I'll let you know that everything's on track. There's a certain comfort to that. So this is where you really take yourself away from that stress and you can focus on what you do best, and that is running your business, right?
yeah, absolutely. So founders, and this leads into this perfectly, right? So founders often focus heavily on growth, right? So where do you see people neglecting protection when they're going through that phase?
Yeah, so we often see that they're so good and so creative and so entrepreneurial that they get started tomorrow, right? Today's tomorrow. They haven't thought about tax inefficiencies, ownership structures, legal agreements, concentration risk, all the things that probably, had they cared about, they wouldn't be as good as what they are at what they do, right? So it's really to say what they need to have is someone there to be able to manage those aspects where they are rightly lacking, because you want to not be average. You don't want to be a jack of all trades. You want them doing the one thing that they can do, and that's driving their business forward, accessing new opportunities, innovating. So, it's often to say that, if you have all that going on, then as long as you start seeking advice strategically early on, you're not going to be in a situation where you're just, how should I say, troubleshoot your way all the way through by year 30, but have no safety blanket. What we want to do is to say, we want you charging ahead, but at the same time, what you can have is have a strategy capturing what all that success, income success, translating that to asset, well-structured asset success. So you can be by the time you're finished having all your fun, you can just go, boots up, I have the most tax efficient structure in place, give me a good income so I can enjoy the life that I'm now accustomed to, rather than get a real shock when you stop chasing those deals and that deal flow stops, not because you want to, because of age or opportunity, and you don't have anything to fall back on. And that will be the very disappointing thing that people have as high performance, is to say, hey, you've achieved so much in your career, in your business, and your wealth has not reflected, and your living standard has not reflected what you've enjoyed for the past few decades.
Yeah, and we see that quite a lot, actually, like especially in the work that we do with getting businesses sale ready. There's so many business owners out there that haven't thought about this, or they, come back to structure again. They may own the business solely in their name, not in the right structure that would give them the benefit when they do sell, or, they've just put every dollar they had back into the business and haven't grown any external asset base during that time frame. And then, of course, they get to the end and, they're the sole founder that's doing all the things. And, that makes it really hard to sell. So, we see that often. I think what you've really hit the nail on the head there with making sure that you get that expert advice, especially through those years, to do the things that you're really not good at. Because we're not good at everything as business owners. We have our lane and we should stick in our lane, and get people like yourself to tell us how to do the other things so that it works best for us when we're ready to do something with it.
Well, it's a very good example that you put there, Kerrie. Like, often, I understand that there's more than one way to skin a cat. Not everyone, the way I would plan for someone two couples on PAYG, pardon me, is very different how I would plan for someone who has who is the entrepreneur. And often, sometimes, depending, there's different sorts of business. Some businesses have very good annuity income streams, so we can treat them like a PAYG in building their assets year on year. Others, they've had to channel so much in their business. It's so asset and investment heavy that you have to keep putting in, or you won't be able to stay relevant in your field. But what that means is that you're going to have big assets at the end of the day, plant, machinery, whatever it might be. You need to sell that. Are you going to sell your business as an ongoing concern? Who you've spoken to in terms of restructuring your business to make it sellable? What are comparable businesses that are all who are selling at a multiple that you want? Are you there yet? What changes you need to make? These changes, I dare say, Kerrie, you would be better placed to answer, but they're not going to be a quick change. There might be 2 to 5 years, maybe more. In some cases, you want the documentation right for the processes. You want the contracts right for the employees. You want to have the structures right for when you sell. Like these, when I'm sitting down with clients 10 years out, we don't just press a button at year 10 and say, hey, this is it. It's something to say, hang on, if part of that plan is to say we're going to sell that business, well, we better get that business in tip-top shape, see the right professionals, make sure that that's ready to go, be benchmarking to know that the value is increasing in what we've forecast. And it's just pushing you towards that goal. And so what people underestimate is it's not just having a strategy, it's having that professional to push you, get you there. If I saw the doctor once and then suddenly I was living to 100, that would be magical. But reality is, it's me seeing the doctor every year, him telling me or her telling me what I need to be doing, making sure that I put a plan together to implement all the things that I wasn't able to do that year, every year that got me to living longer and healthier, right? And preserving my health. Wealth is no different.
I'd be curious to see the ones that live in the blue zone see the doctors.
I think that the key is seeing their friends, having a good laugh. I think we're really really understated the value that being social and happiness has, and understated what stress does to our lives and does to our health. And on that basis, stress is often, when we come to people, no matter how wealthy they are, if they don't have a plan, they're going to be stressful. Why? because they're working and they keep working so hard because they're living in fear that they're not going to achieve what they don't even know what they're achieving. They're growing and growing and growing, but what for? And so, even when people, what I say to clients is begin with the end in mind. It doesn't matter how far they want to go. That's great. That's a goal. But then at what point, when you hit that point, what are you going to do? And so if you know where you're going to go, you know how hard you have to run, or how much of your lifestyle you're able to maintain whilst achieving that. And often that gives a level of calmness, because people don't want to be in a position where they have to give up the whole living standard 10 years out so they can retire feeling like they've achieved, because they're giving away what for Kerrie today, for Kerrie tomorrow. But then they're saying, but if I keep working like this, there might not be Kerrie of tomorrow, right? And so this is why it's important to get started early, because that's not stress free. That's stressful. You're taking a burden of stress in feeling that you're not doing what you thought you could do for yourself today and enjoying today for a better future tomorrow. And so, getting the systems right to do a bit every day. It's like brushing your teeth so your teeth don't fall out at the end of the day. It's not the sexy stuff, but you know what? It's the necessary stuff. And often people get it, they understand it, because in the end, it is future them. And really, no matter how selfish people often are about themselves today, they do want those options, and it's about choice. And so that removes stress for the future. So you're either battling stress of what your future self may or may not have versus what you get to have for your current self today and tomorrow.
I like that. It really is the unsexy stuff that makes everyone successful. It's so boring, I know, but it is the unsexy stuff that works.
Everyone only celebrates with you when you've crossed the finish line and you're succeeding, right? And they'll either say that you're lucky. They don't know all the hours of training that you've done before you got to that point. And hear athletes and Olympians talking about training for 4 years to run 10 seconds or whatever it might be, but they've never seen the cold mornings, the late evenings, the unappetizing meals they've had to ingest, all the late nights with friends that they've given up, all for a goal, right? And so, really this personal success and the planning that people put in, and how their prior preparation has put them in a good place to really enjoy their lives. It's something that people have earned. So I fully respect people who have that happiness, and you can see the ones that are happy, and you can see the ones that maybe a bit stressed when they're faced with some certain decisions later on in life, and that's a byproduct of planning.
So on this podcast, we do talk a lot on and off about nervous system safe success. So how does financial clarity and emotional regulation change the way founders lead and grow?
It's an interesting question. Leading and growing, I mean, if emotional regulation is something that not everyone's necessarily born with. Emotional regulation is developed over time. And leading, and if you're saying leading personally or leading in business, if you lead in business, naturally a calm leader is a leader who's not reacting to every fork in the road, every pothole, and they're able to calmly guide and be a steward for their employees and as an influence and a mentor for those around them. But that calmness often comes from having a clear vision, right? And so that brings us back to the context and clarity for their business and their personal wealth, right? And if they know the business is headed and their wealth is headed exactly where they need to go, it means that the decisions, it gives room and space for them to teach and be peaceful and understanding of circumstances that can bring out the best in their team, bring best out in their partner, in helping them achieve a goal. So one poor decision won't derail them from where they want to go. So by understanding and having structure in place that, for example, we give our clients, they're not checking their bank balances out of anxiety every day. They're not avoiding tax or big decisions because they're feeling overwhelmed. They're not making reactive moves to feel in control again, whether that be personal or from a decision-making process. Instead, we're just design their finances so that even if income pauses or markets move, they feel safe and stable. So what's interesting is that once people reach that point, they actually grow wealthy faster because they're no longer making decisions from urgency. They're making them from clarity. So wealth isn't just absolutely. So wealth isn't when your numbers just go up. It's when your decisions calm down.
I like that. That's really good. I do really like that. So if someone's listening, knows they're making money decisions from pressure rather than clarity, where should they start? And what's one behavior shift that improves financial decision making?
I would say that they should seek advice, because if that's happening a lot, there's clearly a cycle there that's happening. They need to sit down and work out what's happening with someone that they trust and they're comfortable with, so then they can make the changes themselves and have that. How should I say? I run an investment committee. I don't do that because I don't have knowledge. I do that because I want to have an external director sit and hold me to account for the decisions that I make, right? And so there's nothing wrong with getting a coach. I do it in, kids do it and high athletes do it all the time. You've got speech coaches for your prime ministers, presidents around the world. Everyone who wants to be successful has someone in their corner giving them advice, holding them accountable. Whether they want to win Wimbledon, it's all the same. And so this is what I would say to you, is that it's okay having your mistakes or having your faults. But that's not to say that can define you, because we talked about identity. You can rejig your identity as long as you are able to, number one, identify what you're doing. And number two, have someone in there to give you different ways to approach it. So you're either able to change the way you react in those situations by, number one, being aware. Number two, give you some tips on how to react. And depending on how you're reacting will require a different level of professional help. And number three is the coolest thing, often in business, if at some point the business owner becomes the bottleneck and you're removed, and the business can be even more successful without you at the CEO level, maybe at the director level, where you can see how well the business is going. That is not even that's not a poor sign. That's a compliment, right, to the idea and the vision that you had in the very beginning. And sometimes that's what it takes. Then that's what it takes. And if that means the result gives you a better outcome, then why not? But it takes a lot of change, a lot of courage to put yourself in a situation where you want to do better, and you're prepared to do whatever it takes to get that better. But naturally, that better has to be defined and congruent with what you want.
That's the dream, to still have the business. And
depends. Some people on the beach. Definitely, if you work to live. Live to work, maybe not, but again, from what we discussed, that you can't have everything. I mean, that's why we have plans for different people. People have different wants, needs, and objectives, and it's there will be a handful of people that want to work to their very last breath, and I would not take that away from them, and congratulations to them. But there's also others that, I would say, if you think of it differently, if your work is so important and you're doing so well, the greatest leadership is to set up another generation of leadership beneath you to carry on that work. Because if it's as important as what you believe it to be, then you make it a legacy that can continue with the right structure in place. and the right leadership, that you've given them enough experience so it doesn't fall apart when you leave.
Yeah. So it sounds like wealth isn't just built through strategy. It's protected through behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Behavior and systems. And with systems, it's something that everyone can use and that you can rely upon, rather than focalize, focus all decision making on a single reactive or pressured decision. You want to have measured decisions along the way, taken at regular points. And that's why we regularly review our clients. It's not something that we just, when things go wrong, that we bring clients in. We're always saying, well, let's meet regularly to make sure that our plan is relevant, we're up to date. Are there some things that happen that were outside of our bounds of reasoning, or that happen left of field? Or are there things coming up that we know that, for example, we were talking about these changes ever since they were released as a budget paper, tax changes, what would we theoretically need to do, and by when? And so, having that comfort in place puts them ahead of the game from their peers, and that gives you confidence to say, hey, we have a few plans that we can execute, but it's still not the time yet. It's still a year away for some of those changes. Well, okay, if that's the case, we will deal with those then, but we know exactly what actions we're going to take.
Yeah, having that plan, regardless, is always makes things a lot easier, a lot more calmer. Sometimes having plan A, B, C, D, and E is what helps us sleep at night.
It does. I mean, it's all risk, right? And then risk and opportunity are both sides of the same coin. And as long as we're able to know that we've mitigated any risks that we can manage, then often the ones that we don't see, we can live with that because we've done everything we could, right? So we put effort into our relationships. If we put all the effort that we could, then we know that we've done well.
Yeah. So what's one thing financially successful founders need to
unlearn? I would say that they can't do it all.
Yeah. Preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
That is really important.
Yeah. So, in the past, when you're a founders are very good at breaking new ground. They're good at creating new revenue streams, services, products. But a founding CEO is very different. Startup CEO is very different from a mature business CEO. And so often we'll say, you don't escape financial stress by earning more. You escape it by removing dependence on needing more, right? And often you will see founders just try and, I'll bring on more clients. I'll bring on more clients. I'll bring on more clients. But if they're not servicing those clients well, if they don't have the right systems and procedures in place, then obviously, where's the quality control? What is going on? You're doing all this hard work. Where's your cash flow? And if they're not looking at their numbers, they're not looking at their processes, they're not looking at their systems, they're not looking after their people, they're not remaining compliant, any number of one of those factors, that's where all the heavy lifting could be done, when really they don't have the clarity in the numbers of their business and their structures to be able to have that confidence to say, stop chasing new business, new income. Yeah. Is it you? Do they need a manager? Do they love people? Do they hate people? Why are they working for themselves? And if you're able to answer those questions often enough, then the answer will be, you need someone in there that maybe has complementary skill sets to what you have as a founder, and that's probably going to level things out and give you that confidence and clarity again.
Yeah. So true. See all the time. It cracks me up. Andrew, this has been such a thoughtful conversation. What stands out for me is that wealth isn't only about what you earn, it's about what you behave. So thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me, Kerrie. Really enjoyed it.
We did too. And for founders, especially, the emotional side of money shapes far more decisions than most people realize. This is the Business Rebellion, and this is what it sounds like to do business differently.